But
Ours.
it was definitely, I really was kind of shocked.
All right, I'll call to order the Ravenna City Council meeting for Monday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. Yeah, the 3rd was the canceled meeting. First item on the agenda is a moment of meditation and silence. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. And Chelsea, would you call the roll?
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Ms. West? Here. Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael? Here. Mr. Karras?
Here.
Ms. Woods? Here. Mr. Harper?
Here.
Next on the agenda is our yearly election of the President Pro Tem. Do we have any motions or nominations, I should say, for Pro Tem?
I would like to nominate Ms. Michael.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations on the table? You know, in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Congratulations. Next item on the agenda is the committee assignments that you all should have received. Nothing has changed year to year. So even Mr. Calfee still on for Parks, and Mr. Moskin and Harper are on for Cemetery. Are there any questions regarding those? Motion to approve? No? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of charter review. On your agenda, you should have the commission members, and then within your packet, you should also have the applications themselves if you want to review them. This evening, we will need, or we're looking for a motion to accept these applications.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
And with just to clarify, if anybody wants to, well, let me put the PSA out there too. There's information, if anybody's interested to serve on Charter Review Commission, we have 9 members. There are 15 total. So if anybody in the audience is interested, we need members. What I was getting at, and you can email Chelsea, or if you know somebody, they can email our clerk or counselor, get a hold of us that way. But what I was getting at is that we should still be able to move forward with the 9 members for Charter Review Commission.
I guess we're in a challenging situation. The charter calls for the 13 members plus 2 alternates. And as I understand it, we have done about, not personally, but Chelsea, the mayor, president of council, have reached out into the community and continuously attempted to obtain individuals, encourage individuals to become members of the Charter Review Commission. And it's hard to say exactly why, but COVID could play a part in it, but people have not come forward. So at this point, the individuals that are before you are the ones who have volunteered to serve on the Charter Review Commission. Although the charter may say more, practically speaking, we're in a situation where we really can't do anything about it. And we have to move forward with what we have, and are really thankful and appreciate people coming forward to do it in this time. So at this point, I would think that our only alternative is, as Andrew indicated, people are always willing to come forward and be added to get up to the number that the charter references. We're more than happy to accept it. There's going to be a point, though, where obviously consideration is going to be given, and from that point on, it's going to be very challenging to move forward with any more added. But we certainly have enough time that if there's anyone out there who is interested, if you would please come forward, we would welcome you.
Thank you. So with that, we have a motion to accept these applications or members on the... Oh, we got it. Okay, I'm sorry. So the next item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes That's the special city council meeting of November 22nd, and then the regular city council meeting of December 6th. Were there any additions or corrections to those? Do we have a motion to accept as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
No communications this evening? Do we have any delegations from the public tonight? All right. Moving on then, we all should have received the report of officials in your packets. Were there any questions, comments regarding those?
New fire truck. Do we know?
Chief, somebody mentioned the new fire truck. Is that still?
Okay. I've been waiting patiently. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Questions? We have a motion to accept the submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, report or the committee meetings will begin next week at 5:30, so January 17th, beginning with utilities. Mr. Moskin.
There is nothing for next week.
The 17th?
Be the
18th. You're right. Thank you. Martin Luther King Day. Tuesday, the 18th.
I have a question. In regards to that, I know in the past where we've had, depending on how much we have in the committee, we've had committee and then gone into finance, having it the same night. Is that something that you might want to do, or do you guys want to, continue it?
Would you do that by week?
You just talking about
month.
Next week?
Yeah,
one
just
time?
for this next week.
Because
No,
I see.
because we
I
had to miss the first meeting of the month, so we're backlogged a week. So we're not.
No, because
Five Mondays.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking, because I know in the past we used to do that sometimes when we would, have to change things around. It was just an idea. If there's not a lot on the agenda,
Yeah.
we can always do that, but we don't have to. Okay.
Thanks. So back to utilities.
Okay, there'll be nothing for next week.
Information systems. Well, information systems.
That's me.
Yeah.
Nothing for this evening and to be determined for next week.
Planning, Mr. Karras.
We have a couple of items for consideration tonight, and we will be having a meeting next Tuesday.
Thank you. Committee of the whole will be January 24th at 7 p.m. Public health and safety, Ms. Michael.
I do have an item tonight, and we definitely will be having a meeting next week.
Mr. Harper, street and sidewalks.
3 items for consideration this evening, and I believe we are going to need a meeting.
Personnel, Mr. Calfee.
No plan for meeting this coming week.
All right. And Ms. Wood, community and economic development.
several items on the agenda this evening and to be determined.
Okay. Any updates from the cemetery that we want to discuss this evening?
We did okay for their continuance for their hospitalization insurance, and pertaining to that, there were no increases for their insurance for year 2022. And then we will be voting on pay increases this next meeting, which would be the last calendar day of the month of their working day.
I did have a conversation about a joint meeting with Mr. Gibson at that meeting. He seemed like he wanted to do it just in a bigger setting because of the COVID numbers. I told him we could do it at the high school. He seemed to like that idea. I don't know if we've had a confirmation from that, but tentatively scheduled for that Tuesday after MLK Martin Luther King Day.
Committee of the whole. Yeah, okay.
So, I said, I don't know if they've confirmed with anybody up here, if you've heard from them in regards to that meeting.
You know, who was elected chairman, did he say?
He did not say. No. Sure. But at that meeting, a approve the appointees, go with the budget, which they still have major concerns about, which is in mediation. But they did agree tentatively to a joint meeting.
Okay.
Does that meeting have to be in person?
Yes. I would, well, maybe the township city meeting, maybe not. I don't know.
Depends on what the contract says. I don't know if the contract says what type of meeting it has to be.
It's an ORC too. I think we'll have a few more items to discuss.
Statute, I think it says a joint meeting.
That's all it says.
Just, if the concern is the space, that maybe that's something we should consider if we are able to do that.
Okay. All right. Oh, sorry. No, it'll be the 18th, so Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Larry. And then I know it's not on here, but is there anything additional for parks that you want to add?
Well, I just wanted to mention that we did have several winter programs and activities in December. Two that were quite successful was the selfie studio, where we had set up a number of photo booths for people to take Christmas selfies, along with a lot of different props. It was quite successful. We scheduled times, 6 families to a time slot, and we filled up quite a few hours with that. It was quite successful, and we're hoping that we're able to do that again. We also had a Christmas cookie camp that where they were kids could come in and do Christmas cookies. Another successful program. And then just briefly, the last of the HVAC systems was installed at the rack, and so that got finished up. That's all we have this month.
Well, that'll take us into first reading of ordinances. Beginning.
I just wanted to, I assume everybody knows that Judy's father passed away in the services tomorrow. With St. Peter's.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. Well, moving into first reading of ordinances then. Beginning with ordinance number 2022-001.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into amended agreement with Optum Healthcare Solutions, LLC, and declaring an emergency.
And this is public health and safety. Ms. Michael?
Hi, yes, this is basically changing from a person who used to be qualified, that they were like, I believe, 62 or 65, where United Healthcare would pay. Now United Healthcare will pay for 18 and up, and they can go to the rack for free if they have United Healthcare. So there's a great opportunity for some of our younger youth that have United Healthcare. They can come and join into our classes.
Yeah. Any questions on this item? We have a motion to waive the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And a motion to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-002.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids according to law for the paving of South Chestnut Street and Riddle Avenue and declaring an emergency.
This is streets and sidewalks. Mr. Harper?
Yeah, just to kind of remind everybody, this project's being done because of a grant received by Mr. Finney. It's an 80-20 split. The city's portion is about $128,000. Chestnut will be paved from Main to Lake, and Riddle will be paved from Meridian to Liberty.
Any questions on this item? We have a motion to waive.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And then do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-003.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation accepting requirements associated with federal funding for resurfacing South Chestnut Street and Riddle Avenue and declaring an emergency.
This is also streets and sidewalks, Mr. Harper.
Yeah, this is just agreeing to the terms from the state on how to spend the money for the resurfacing project we just talked about.
Questions on this item? Do we have a motion to waive 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood? Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And then a motion to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-004.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids according to law for the 2022 paving program to include asphalt, concrete streets, crack ceilings, sidewalks, and striping pursuant to specifications now on file in the mayor's office and declaring an emergency.
This is also streets and sidewalks.
And just like it says, this is our annual paving program that we do annually now. Total budget's just over $1 million for this coming summer's projects.
Questions on this item?
Although it's a routine matter each year for us to do this, I just want to say again that it's a wonderful thing that we passed money to put this paving program into effect. And the results of the paving over the last few years have been phenomenal and exceptional. And although it's very routine, it's great that we can do it, and really want to thank the citizens for supporting that levy and the money to do this. It's just great. So I just wanted to mention that before we pass this authorization.
Yeah, and you should all should have received. I'll second that. There's a map that engineering sends around that I like to look at every year, and this year they're paving 8.43 lane miles for 2022. Last year they just did over 12. So since 2019 it's been 8+ miles each year. So I like looking at that, and they've done over 50%, I believe, of the lane miles within the city since that levy's been passed. So yeah, to your point, they've done a great job.
If we could just get people to realize that Main Street and 59, we don't do that. So it's not our fault.
Keep in mind, Bob is always looking when somebody else gives something up. If they don't want to do it, he's first in line to get the grant money so that we are able to do more, as with the Chestnut and Ravenna. We've been very fortunate. We've got good people chasing us.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job. And I believe 59 is on the agenda in the very near future.
Yeah, I think he moved it up somehow, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Seems like a long time away, but it's gonna
coming.
be here quick. So.
Yeah. Any other questions on this item? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And then do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved. Second?
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
That that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-005.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Quality Control Inspection Incorporated, QCI, to provide inspection services for construction projects for the year 2022 and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by Planning, Mr. Karas.
It is. I thought it was
Should be streets or utilities.
Yeah, I think this
Yeah.
is just a backup contract in case they
That's
need,
all right. I mean,
inspectors and other people. It's in place in case, correct me if I'm wrong, in case we need them, but it's not necessarily always utilized. I think the terms are the same as last.
Anything we want to add to that statement?
There's money available, just like what Rob said.
Yeah.
He clarified it well.
Any questions on this item? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And then do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-006.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Ravenna, Part 10, Streets, Utilities, Public Services, Title 6, Other Public Services, Chapter 1062, Collection of Recyclable Materials, Section 1062.03, Declaration of Collection and Disposal as a Public Utility, and declaring an emergency.
I believe these were flip-flopped last two, but utilities or planning can take it. Mr. Moskin, you want to take this one?
Okay, now that's fine. Okay, this has to do with the recycling program and the agreement between county recycling and the city. The rate went up by $3 per month. This agreement will end June 30th of 23. It's different. It's an 18-month agreement.
This one's just updating and codified.
Yeah, when we dealt with the contract that Paul's talking about last month, we noticed a discrepancy. Kay and I were reviewing some of the changes, and the section that declares recycling a public utility also references where the fees are assessed. And for some reason, it was pointing to a section in our code that has to do with solid waste trash collection. That would be 1060.15 when it should have been referencing 1062.11. So it's just fixing a problem that's been in our code for a little while.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Do we have a motion to waive?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And then a motion to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
All right, that item is adopted. The next ordinance on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-007.
An ordinance to appropriate $15,000 for Main Street Ravenna for the city's annual contribution and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by Community and Economic Development. Ms. Wood?
Yes. I was not,
Or do you-
unfortunately,
This
I
was-
missed the meeting.
This was in the planning committee meeting.
These are all.
It probably should have been because I think in the past, just give you the rundown here. In the past, we had approved 3 years ago a commitment of $5,000 per year for Main Street, Ravenna. With that expiring, the pitch was made, and we have a couple of people from Main Street's board here. The expectation is probably a little bit unrealistic from the National Main Street Program, but the eventual ask was $15,000 a year, which is kind of in line with what other cities, municipalities contribute to their Main Street programs. So when we debated this, and by the way, Main Street provided a lot of information about the return on investment. A couple of noted examples are the recent district plan, which was a $50,000 investment, which we've already seen, in my opinion, some results from in how we are going to renovate the city parking lot for Meridian. And then through Main Street, there was a grant for Riddle Block 9, which is a substantial amount of money to help them renovate that building. And then there's various other things that are harder to calculate, the programming they put on, Art on Main, things like that, how they contribute to our city are a little less easy to define, but certainly well accepted and are good for our city. So we landed at $15,000 for 1 year instead of a 3-year commitment, with the opportunity for Main Street to come back a year from now and justify that for a continuing contribution.
Other questions from council?
And I apologize. First, I'm going to say I'm not opposed to the contribution. I'll start that way, but I do think that the increased amount is a little excessive on a percentage basis, going from 5,000 to 15,000. I also think that there are some other nonprofit agencies that contribute to the city and do a lot of things for our residents. And where do we stop? Where do we draw the line? How much are we going to contribute? And I feel like the chamber contributes just as much as Main Street does. We've got some other entities that also help the residents. And I think that we would be better off maybe increasing from the 5,000, but not quite doing 15,000, so that we can distribute to other agencies as well. We also have some staffing issues with the fire department that, we have things where our expenses, our operating costs are going to be going up. I would like us to be a little bit more frugal on donations and contributions.
Appreciate the comments.
I don't know what to say. That's the number we landed on, was agreed to on the committee, and then it also was pushed forward from the committee of the whole. I'm not exactly sure if you're asking to amend the ordinance, but I think that would require a formal action.
Well, are you asking to amend this, or are we council?
Because we can vote. If we vote on this without any other action, it's 15,000.
Yeah.
If it's your desire to be less, you need to make a motion for the amount you would replace that with, and then we vote to see if that amendment passed.
I think something like at this point, I don't know that we change that amount, but I think that maybe going in the future direction, talk about when budget is done, look at how much in a pot that we're going to donate. And, if other places that are nonprofits in town, wanted to do something, they could actually apply like what the city of Kent does.
Well, I agree that there should be some type of an application process rather than just giving a blank check to any entity.
Well, it's $15,000.
Right, but it's you don't have anything saying it's going towards this. I know the city of Kent, when they apply, it's going specifically towards a certain event or certain materials, certain things.
Is that true that there's some designation? It was 65,000 when we discussed this a few years ago, and I think, Brian, it's more than that now.
Well, it went up to 70, but they cut it back, I think, to 65.
For 1 year, right?
But do they does the city of Kent put stipulations on it, how Main Street can spend it?
They did not. I
I don't believe so. I mean, it's not really my department to look at, but there was a time when they really audited all their financials and they got away from that. I don't think that's what they're doing. I think they're basing it on their budget more. Their budget is like this high, so
Right. Well, they have to give
they're giving more than
their
like
staff.
what ours is. Our Main Street's, lower budget. Ours is a little bit newer too.
Right. It's much newer.
Yeah,
Much newer.
I think what I'm saying is I know Kent, years back when I first got on council, I met with Bridget because I thought it was a really
They
neat
did the
idea.
application.
And they have a fund. They have a fund
They
that
do.
every
That's
year.
a different. That's different.
That's a
Main
completely
Street's got its
different.
own
It has
thing.
nothing to do with Main Street.
Yeah,
So
Main
it's just
Street's
an
got its own
option.
agreement, but then there's another pot of money that they
Right.
do.
So everyone can
designate
apply at
and
one
apply.
time and they can disperse it.
And that one is very event specific and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and they have to show the need.
Yeah, so that's
Oh.
something completely different. But that's an idea that something that this council wants to look at down the road in the future.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt, But
When they presented to us what they, what their objectives were for the upcoming year, and I mean, they're going to spend the money based on the objectives of Main Street. I mean, it's not like they have particular rules that they have to follow as far as the Main Street.
Yes. And I used to be a member, so I am aware of what their restrictions are. I'm just saying, I think we need to be a little bit more frugal. And we have other nonprofits, and if every nonprofit comes in here and says, well, we do this for Ravenna, we do that for Ravenna, how do we say no?
I get your point. I think you have to recognize that there are these different organizations are organized differently. Main Street, when you buy into the program, the city actually does have to make a commitment. And every year we pay a $500 fee to Main Street. It's just sort of an acknowledgement of the
We
city's
also
commitment.
make a commitment to do, like the municipal lot, we have a commitment that we're adding landscaping and beautiful things that from the plan to the parking lot, that's an added expense that we wouldn't have been spending otherwise. There's,
Sure, I understand. I mean, the plan was brought forth from the building department. It's very similar to the district plan.
but it goes on the district plan's guidelines.
I don't know if they specifically, I don't know.
It's not specific, you have to do this or you have to do that,
Right.
but Bob did a very good job at including the things that the district plan
I would
had.
remind you that there's another gentleman that is going to pay for all the trees to the tune of about $25,000 to $30,000.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which the same gentleman that provided the money for the plan that was presented.
Oh, I was under the impression that was an anonymous donor.
Yeah, it is. I
Okay.
haven't said his name.
Anonymous to you. Well, I guess my point would be, if the city had invested, and I know we invested a certain amount, 3,000 or so, in that plan, if we had paid for it outright, that would have cost us $50,000. So we
Right.
actually saved money because the money was committed by this donor for the most part. I mean, I get your point at some level, but as you know, we were both on the Main Street Board on its inception. I think Main Street programs are a little different, and the expectation is that cities make a financial commitment and other types of
And like I
commitments.
said in the beginning, I'm not opposed
Right.
to a contribution at all. I would like us to do more of step increases rather than just take a big leap.
Well, with that, I think having a debate further down the line and having a conversation about what you suggested to Ms. Michael about another line item, I think is an interesting conversation to have. But with tonight, and I appreciate the back and forth since Cheryl wasn't here the past meeting, but on the table right now, if I heard you correctly, you're okay with the $15,000 appropriation. Are there any other questions related to that that we can answer?
I have one. Depending on how the money is used through the year with Main Street, would that still be a donation, or would it, same amount, or would it be cut back depending on how it's used?
I think it would
if
be
not all of
No,
it's used.
it's just
conversation year to year.
Well, this is just for 1 year,
correct.
Yes.
so we could change it next year. We could eliminate it next year, in a sense. I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, no, I'm not saying eliminate it.
No, I know. But as far as from the moment, assuming this gets passed, until next year, we we just give them the money and it's
Well,
theirs to spend.
Right.
For 22.
Yes. And in 2023, we can revisit all this. That's kind of where we went with the committee and the committee as a whole.
With this investment too, I want to jump in because as we talk about police and fire as we do ride-alongs there, Heritage Ohio has their own website that you can go on and see what their 4 points are, what the mission, generally speaking, is with Main Street, or what it's outlined on Heritage Ohio, and just listening. I know they have webinars. Julie in the past has offered to include us in some of the updates that they would provide. And hearing that streamline of that conversation from Columbus to wherever they're located, Heritage Ohio, to Main Street, you get a better idea of what the mission is and how the money might be spent, or what pockets you might see those the money being spent. So I think with that, we've had a long discussion on this. I appreciate the discussion. I don't want to completely cut it off, but in the instance of time, is there any other last minute questions on this? Do we have a motion to waive the
Statement that, they're in here requesting this money. Julie was in to see me earlier about seeing if I would be able to match what we had, the 5,000 we had given, because when this was designed, the plan was that they had to have $80,000 pledged for 3 years in order to become a Main Street. And they had that, and it did work out for 2 years. But quite honestly, I think without this money, they're going to have a hard time surviving. And I think that we're becoming poised with some of the changes that are happening downtown. It's not a good time to turn our back on something like this. There are a lot of people that put time and energy into this. And we don't want to start putting people into camps.
Well, I think we're all on the same page. I think it's just getting everybody pulling in the same direction. And I think it was actually a response to Larry, possibly, in regards to Cuyahoga Falls and what they did with the 2019 appropriations, because their Main Street is relatively young too. And I thought that was a good example. Kent is a little, it's a little higher. They spend a lot more money with their city, but not quite apples to apples. But the young Main Street out in Cuyahoga Falls was an interesting comparison. So I don't want to get in back and forth. Was there a quick comment you want to make?
My name's my 2 cents. I was at the committee meetings, and they would have been perfectly happy with $10,000 a year
For 3 years. It was 10,000 for 3 years.
They wanted 15 for 3 years. Sorry.
Right, but during the discussion, that was sort of my suggestion that let's just do 15 for 1 year.
Yeah, and I don't want to get in debate. So if you want to make a quick comment, that we can.
The other one, simply that I want to say is that I think the Chamber of Commerce is more valuable for Ravenna than Main Street Ravenna, so I certainly hope you're planning to step up and support them with as much or more.
I appreciate the comment. I don't know. We'll take on the chamber conversation separately. I don't know if.
We had talked about that in the meeting.
I told you where I'm at.
Yeah. Right now, we're focused on the Main Street ordinance here. So with that, I want to call for a motion. Is there a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelty?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And is there a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Kelty?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Kelty?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-008.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Ravenna, Part 8, Business Regulation and Taxation Code, Title 2, Business Regulation, Chapter 812, Canvassers and Solicitors, Section 812.14, Exclusions, Chapter 840, Peddlers, Section 840.01, Peddler Defined, and Section 840.15, Exclusions, and repealing Chapter 858, Temporary Stores, and declaring an emergency.
Talked about this quite a bit, but I think it's
Yeah.
sponsored by planning, Mr. Karras.
Yeah, so we have, over the last few months, talked about making some changes. There's basically 3 sections in our code. One deals with canvassers and solicitors. Those are the people that go door to door taking orders for things to be delivered later. There's peddlers, which are people, who populate our city, either going door to door, setting up shop someplace, and selling their wares. And then there are temporary stores where people occupy a certain space temporarily to sell their stuff. And when we reviewed this, one of the things we noticed was there was no exception, because all these different codes require people to go to the mayor's office and actually fill out an application and get a badge and a permit to actually conduct this type of business. But we never had exclusions for the Girl Scouts, for the athletic clubs, and the other so-called charitable organizations. So one of the things we tried to do was sort of like make this a little bit more efficient and include those exclusions. So the changes are basically to take the temporary stores are transient traders. So because you really can't, it's not a store. What you're really restricting or controlling are the people, not physical locations in this sense. So one simple change was to make those transient traders equivalent to peddlers. So we're getting rid of the temporary stores ordinance entirely and just putting it, because it was parallel to peddlers, under the peddlers ordinance. And then to the peddlers ordinance and the canvassers and solicitors ordinances, including the exclusions, the exceptions for having to fill out an application that I just mentioned. So those, I know it sounds more complicated. Hopefully this will just fix problems.
Streamline it.
Yeah, streamline it.
I appreciate the work.
Codifying the way we've been doing business anyway.
Yeah, appreciate the work you put into it. Is there any questions on this item?
Yes. One thing that I think it might have been mentioned before, but there's been several places where I refer to them as food vendors. I haven't seen one of them where they have something there to wash their utensils, they have to clean their hands periodically, things of this nature. I just think that's...
Well,
and
that's the health department does regulate the food vendors. Not all these people sell food, so they don't necessarily need to get permission or permitted by the health department. But the kind of vendors you're talking about do, and they're the ones that would control whether they have a safe, environment in terms of washing utensils and preparing food correctly. So, that's separate from what we permit.
Okay.
We have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings.
So, second.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
We have a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Then do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karras?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
All right, that is everything on first reading of ordinances. There's nothing on second or third reading of ordinances this evening. Is there any old or new business to come before council?
I don't know if I want to bring this up under old business, but I do have the Safers grant is going to be. Should I bring this up now? Do you want me to bring it up now under old business?
I think it'd be new business.
No, because we talked about it already. I mean,
Well, if there's
Safers-
no old, we can jump into new, and then you can take that.
Okay.
Either one.
Okay.
There's no.
Make it new.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as you all are aware, we have talked in the past about the Safers grant, and we kind of went back and forth about it. The timeline is coming up, and it's something that we either have to go. We have to go forward, and whether you choose to support it, whether you don't choose to support it, it's something that they're going to need an answer to apply. I will tell you that our department is in dire need of some more bodies. COVID has not helped things. COVID has really put a damper on our department, has increased the workload. Between the squads that they're on, the calls, they're much longer, especially when they go to the hospital. I don't know if some of you are aware, but we're sometimes looking at a 2-hour wait. So they are there waiting with the patient on a wall, and they can't leave that patient. The work as far that our department is required to do with the data, the support, the billing, all of it. Right now, they do not have a secretary, which, because Jake has retired, there's a number of things that I feel we as elected officials are responsible for to make that decision to make sure our department is sufficient. So I don't know if Chief Chappell wants to talk about anything that came tonight to, talk about this, but I am letting you know we are at a very critical point, and our department cannot run with the numbers, the volume that we have. So, I know we did hire and create a position for an inspector, but again, some of these positions are much harder to fill because other departments are becoming more competitive, reaching out to our own firefighters, offering them more money and less responsibility. So there's been a lot of transition at the fire department, and I feel, there's some changes that are coming, but to get that wheel rolling, and despite the hurdles of COVID, I think we need to do what we can and use the resources that the state is providing to help get some other bodies there. So, Mark?
Well, I sent the email out to this last year. We actually had roughly a 13% call volume increase. Along with the increase in call volume, that rate is our wait time at the hospital with no beds upstairs for admission. The ER catch all for critical care, ICU patients that can't be moved from the ER to room. So as I said, indicated, we are being held basically, it's not just run, it's throughout the state. Lack of a better term, captive at the ER because we can't handle the patient without surrendering care to a nurse or another personnel. They hold the same level of care that we provide. With that being said, our calls that we have within our own municipality, and then the email I elaborated that there's 107 calls that we have until we get no personnel, no apparatus that respond. It doesn't seem like a large number, but it's a large enough number to be concerned with which the event is happening. If it's a tree went down on a wire, with someone not reading the wait for some municipality, neighboring community, professionals, they already come respond. How long can we go without intervention? I'm not sure what, if any, you guys would support for the grant. Again, the grant would be, the first year would be self-supplied 100%, including medical benefits, pension pickup, and whatnot. The second year is at 70%, the third year is at 30%, and thereafter would be committed to personnel for 3 years. That being said, if you look at where we're at and what our needs are, if we run a 3-tier routine system, each shift is efficient by a minimum of 1 person. Say 1 person being few, I'll take whatever, but to keep it equal across the board and actually to have a benefit, if a cable requires 9 screws, 9 bolts, 9 washers to hold it up, and it only has 6, will that cable hold it 8? Yes, it will, for a period of time. Eventually, the weight of that that's on that cable is going to collapse. And that's where we're at the point.
And even when Mark, whoever becomes our chief, whether if it's Mark or if it's someone else, if it's someone else, then Mark will go back as a firefighter. If he's not, or if he is going to take it, then there's going to be an opening too, So I think the plan is to go for the 3 and staff our department. Right now, we don't know if there's going to be even maybe some additional funding with COVID coming in because I don't think the state has really realized that it's not just the hospitals, it's our safety forces. And I know I talked to an Akron firefighter, they have 35 firemen out with COVID. We've been battling.
See, those numbers seem large at 35.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I had 87% of my department that had COVID this year.
Yeah.
And can I?
had 3 of them have voice over.
Yeah. So they're hitting them very hard with the call volume.
My personal opinion with the grant, it's a no-brainer. We have to get our guys help. We need to get staffing up to levels that we can accommodate for these situations. And if there's a grant available to help cover and subsidize that, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, I think it's a no-brainer. We have to go for it.
I agree, Cheryl. I've spent quite some time at the fire department. I was actually there New Year's Eve and stopped by because, yes, I had nothing else to do during a pandemic. And there was 4 guys on shift. I mean, if they get one call to the hospital, then they don't have anybody to respond. And I think until you really go and sit, those guys are passionate and they're hardworking and they're so dedicated, but they're exhausted. They didn't tell me that, but you could tell just in talking to them. They need not only this, but we need to really take a look at this to see what other support we can provide because they are not going to be able to continue to do this as a department. They are very prideful and have worked so hard, and I am so proud to live here to work with these guys, but they're not going to be able to maintain this. So this is a nice step.
I'm going to comment. I've seen, I'm not going to say the address or where, that a squad has come out certain places and they've had to have 2 more firefighters come out. It didn't require an engine, just a squad. So the reason I'm saying that, if there's 4 there on that shift, that's the whole shift going to 1 call. And like I said, it didn't require an engine or anything like that. And I believe that this is quite critical to have more employees, especially in a department like this.
There are 6 people on a shift. They may be functioning with 4, but there are 6.
Well,
the others are off either due to illness, comp time, a whole variety of ways that with the staffing. And I'm not arguing about the safer thing. The only caveat that I have with that is that turns into $300,000 to $400,000
a year
that we pick up when it's done. I will pick it up gradually with that. But everything else you said about the working conditions or with this pandemic, that it's very unkind. Very unkind.
Well, I just worry that we're conflating a couple of issues. I don't believe the Safer Grant is meant to fix COVID problems.
No, it's not.
No.
COVID is a temporary
in
thing.
general.
This is a plan to increase our staffing on a permanent basis.
Yes.
That's the intent. So, all this talking about COVID, I understand, but really, if we're talking about this grant as the solution to a problem, it shouldn't be that. It should be a general problem of what the staffing is now and going well into the future. I guess my only concern, I did say this last time, I don't know that we have enough of the data to come to a conclusion. My initial response after seeing, Chief, your email today was that the increase in calls is about 13%. Is that what you said? Right. The increase for three would be, for three new firefighters would actually be a 16% increase in staffing, at least in terms of the numbers, from 18 to 21.
But it would be one per shift.
Well, I don't know about, I'm just talking about an overall, if you're talking about an overall change in how
17%.
Yeah, and then so two people would actually be more in line with what the increase
Except
is.
that leaves the odd numbers.
Keep in mind, when we were a six-man shift, we were a six-man shift with a four-man minimum. When we run 1,400 calls a year, we are more than double that now with the same amount of staff. So if you say the percent is only in the last year. But if you want to look at the percent from day one, our percent is 100+%.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm only pointing that out because I think it may need a deeper dive into the data to see what the right number is. At this point, and that's the only other question I have was process. This is due early February, so we may need, if we're going to consider this, because I don't think we can vote on it tonight.
No.
It's not up for
it's
a
just
vote.
Nope, I'm just making sure you guys are.
Yeah, no, and it's good. I think this is an important topic to discuss. We do need a plan to consider it, whatever the number is. But at this point, I'm more inclined with the more conservative number, given what the mayor says, and we're talking about over the course of this grant period, $1 million investment, and then $360,000 a year plus
Well, remember,
each year.
we're bringing some big new businesses in town. We are expanding quite
Yes.
a bit. And so we're
Mark.
adding more people, we're adding more revenue, and, with some of the work volume that's going to be coming, with these types of jobs, we need to make sure if we're having all these economic development plans of businesses coming here, we want to make sure, we're well staffed.
Yeah, and I had a lot of questions for Brian before the meeting, and I think there still some questions out there in terms of what you're talking about. And 6 to 4, I thought there were. So I think to have a constructive conversation next
Right.
week during committees, if there's any questions, if for the chief or for our finance director, especially when it comes to numbers, do those match up? In my mind, from the outside, and I apologize because I'm going back down the rabbit hole. 3 shifts, you need an increase in staffing. It only makes sense to have 3 additional members at a minimum. So correct me if I'm wrong. What am I missing? But let's dive in next Monday,
Right.
I think, and have a.
I think a resource for you to look at is old data. Is the old paper study. I think we can do that paper study.
If you could send that around to all of council.
Even back then, they were saying the city was on be a 9-man shift.
And I know a longer term conversation, the fire district, what I mentioned to Brian before is if you were to go in and make the investment now with 3 members, what does that look like until we hit the fire district? Is there a timeline for that? Possibly with the conversation, and maybe we would bring all of that together and have a long conversation next Monday on that.
So are we going to be able to then vote on this before he's able to?
Well, that's
send
what
it?
we
That's-
do.
I have a green light with everybody you guys decide before outline. Because all the information, everything, I'm working on the grant currently. Until I hit that submit button, we're fine. But once I hit that submit button, the way that Safer is working now, because a lot of municipalities said, yeah, go ahead and apply for the Safer grant, then they would get the staffing to award it to them. Then they're like, no, we're not going to take it. So now FEMA is not playing that. So what they're doing is they're saying that they have collectively along with your administration and your council or trustees or whatever government is involved, you have to have the buy-in on it. Because once you say you'll take it, you're going to take it. You egg on it, you'll never, it'll be a long time before you ever see one.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Chief. With that, my only remarks this evening, I was going to mention our safety forces, and again, echoing what Ms. West said, thank you to them for everything they've done this past year and in 2020. For council, I think thinking ahead, I had a couple questions in regards to meetings that maybe we could have another discussion, whether it's in personnel or planning next week. Times of the meetings, getting on the same page with that, because I know that hasn't gone out. And then as we're moving forward, in my mind, 2020 was the year of the pandemic. 2021, I think we did a lot of still going on. 2021, I think we did a lot of listening going around, and I want this year moving forward to be, one of action and doing, being more proactive, to steal Mr. Karras's phrasing, moving forward. So I'm excited for the year, and I think having these longer discussions coming ready to talk about, whether it's Safers or Main Street or Chamber or whatever it might be, just being more constructive in here moving forward. So I thank all of you for the 2 years we've had so far, and I'm looking forward to the year ahead. And with that, I'll leave highlighting COVID too. Obviously, we're not done with the outdoor meeting we had, and I appreciate you guys all hanging on for that. And I think it was the first time we've had a couple members sworn in outdoors. So, yeah.
Sorry I missed it.
Yeah, but with that, we'll move on to council remarks. So, Mr. Harper, we'll start with you.
No additional comments tonight, thanks.
Ms. Michael?
No additional comments. I think I spoke enough.
Mr. Karras?
Yeah, I do have one thing I wanted to bring up. And I do want to thank your leadership, Mr. President, because I think the creativity and the ability to be safe is paramount, and I appreciate, even though it was a cold morning, having that alternative. I certainly wouldn't have thought of it. The issue I wanted to bring up today, as we populated our new committee schedule, I started populating into my calendar. I noticed that on June 20th, we have a committee of the whole meeting. And as I was putting in my calendar, it turns out that's the day that Kent State celebrates Juneteenth. And in doing a little research, it turns out state agencies are required to have that as a holiday because that's what the governor decided. But individual municipalities can choose whether or not they celebrate it. And we haven't done that. So I'm suggesting that we consider making Juneteenth an official holiday and add it to our list of holidays into section 260.03 as the holidays that full-time employees have off each year. So that's my one comment. That at some point we certainly have until June if we want to do it this year. Consider making that change.
Thanks. Mr. Moskin?
Yeah, so I want to make a comment to our interim fire chief and if the police chief is here as well, to commend both of those departments. And I know for sure that there's many times both departments have been understaffed for different reasons. So I believe those two departments are extremely important to what's needed to keep them going adequately. Those are my comments.
No additional comments. Thank you.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Split?
Nothing at this time.
All right. Mayor?
Well, a few things. There's a lot of good things going on, but it's going on in a stressful time. I've said this before, and it seems to be accelerating a little bit, that people are really touched about things. We hear different things. And our workers and our employees are in the same boat. We are doing what we can to help out, the immediate help with it, with the fire and department did come and see us. The coverage on absenteeism due to COVID, there was an 80-hour thing given out. Well, many people are way beyond that at this point in time. But that was officially ended in the 1st of July. We continued it out to the end of the year because our people were dealing with it constantly. And our special service, the fire and police. Fire has the most things. They go out now, they are almost guaranteed every other person they see is positive. They came to see us because we had it ended at the end of December. And we talked with them, and we have agreed, and we've done it already. We're extending that out for first responders, not the whole group, because these folks were not able to platoon and stay at home. We had to have them all there doing what they do. So that's one of the concessions that we made, so that because the alternative to that is they have to use their sick leave, and then when they're out of sick leave, they're out of luck. And to me, I could not see them going out and knowing they're going to confront the chance of getting this, and then have to worry about how they're going to take care of it and financially, so to speak. So we have done that. I think you're aware that we have an inside person that is applying for the inspector job, and we've been questioned why we haven't hired that person. Because I cannot pull another person off an ambulance to have them go knock on doors that haven't been knocked on for about 30 years. We've got to get through this thing, and then we'll take care of that. Because it's an internal candidate, we've got it on hold with that. One thing that I'm listening here back and forth with the Savers grant, and I agree with Rob, you need to look at that in isolation and what your needs are. But we're not going to realize that the funds from the developments that are going in probably for 2 or 3 years until it starts making an impact. Well, if the Savers grant would help carry it that long, when we got to the end, hopefully the increased taxes from the businesses that we have will keep us stable, and we'll be looking at that before this meeting. We still don't have a number that we're comfortable with, saying that, no, there's plenty of money to do this, because we've had people in other places with this. But we have our ear to the ground for all of our employees, and of course I was questioned by the union that was left, why didn't we get it? That's because we divided you into shifts, and people were at home to cut down on the possibility of them getting it. First responders had no choice, and the conditions are worse now. It's easier to catch this, so we have to do what we can to help them with that. The Chestnut Commerce Center, the land has been purchased. We're going to be working on the road. Part of the deal on the road is that all has to be done with city money, so to speak. But we get it, but it's after the road's built, you submit the bills to get the money with that. In part of the arrangement on Mr. Harner getting his money, they actually put that into the closing, that the $294,000 that he had borrowed from one of the funds that we use for loans and those sorts of things, the RLF funds. We're going to be getting that money back, but then I'm going to have to come in and you'll have something to do here, I think probably with this next meeting. And it will come back into the funds, but then we're going to have to allocate it out to the road so that they can get started on that as soon as the weather's decent enough with that. We'll probably be allocating some other funds too from the same accounts so that we can get the road completed. Now, we do believe that we should receive most of that money back, and the bids, if they come in right, we'll get it all back. And I think there's a chance, but we have to, a worst case scenario when it comes to stuff like that, you figure it a little high with that. The I guess you saw the paper. We had the ceremony for the honorary way to honor Gary and Trish Krause, who were the owners of Mongoose Motors. Of course, Gary passed away due to the pandemic, and it was bittersweet for the family, but they were very appreciative of it. But the problem I had that day was it was so cold out. There were a lot of older people at that event that I had to open this up and get them inside. This room's been disinfected 3 times since Thursday. Tim keeps it clean, really helps, and we're trying to keep this room as safe as we can for you folks when you come in here. There's more stress than we've had in the past right now. If we see the numbers break on this, I think that will be a positive sign. We'll be starting to stare at spring. I hope that we have an early one. And we can relieve some of the stress. The fire and the policemen are not the only ones that are stressed. We have some stress in the finance department. We're asking a lot of people. We've hired 3 people that were good candidates, and nobody's here to work. One of them just didn't show up, was scheduled to come, and that was the maintenance person that we were so excited about. We haven't heard a word from her since on that. We was an employee from a business here in town. She thought she was going to get laid off, and we were looking at her going to the finance department, and she had great credentials, and she figured it wrong. Her boss left the place, and they asked her to take over the department, and so we lost her. And of course, we had Rita, who was only here long enough to get a cup of coffee and not really reduce any stress in the finance department. But they're under the gun all the time to get things done, and now they're closing out the year. We've got W-2s, and we're looking at getting that 3rd person into that area. But I'm just giving you some of these things. I'm going to stop because I know you guys that Mr. Semino wants some time, and kickoff's in a minute.
Well, yeah, with that, do we have a motion to go into executive session to discuss ongoing litigation?
2 lawsuits, pending lawsuits.
Pending.
Second.
Yes.
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 Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.